So the first topic on the agenda topic is Ambaum Boulevard Park update, and we'll start with planner Alex Hunt with Community Development Director Susan McClain. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, City Council members of the public. Good to see you tonight. My name is Susan McClain. I'm the Director of Community Development, and I'm here today with Planner Alex Hunt. We wanted to provide you with a preview of the Ambaum Boulevard and Boulevard Park planning studies. This is a collaboration with economic development, and it also involves staff from Public Works, Parks, Human Services, and other city departments. Next slide, please. In general, we're talking about two different subareas in Burien's northern neighborhoods. We're looking at how these two neighborhoods will grow and change over the coming 20 years. Along Ambaum, we're going to be asking how this corridor can support businesses and residences and transition toward mixed-use TOD form of neighborhood over time, concurrent with the region's investment in the H-line rapid ride line. This is also already a community that relies pretty heavily on the Route 120 bus line. The H-line would replace the 120. The map you see for Ambaum includes areas within a 5-minute walk of those H-line stations, and that's obviously the map on the left. In Boulevard Park, we'll be working to support the existing Boulevard Park downtown businesses and the surrounding residential neighborhood. In both areas, we'll be working with an eye toward affordable housing and commercial spaces and looking at overall community needs. Next slide, please. Here's another image of both planning areas in the context of North Highline and Burien. North Highline and White Center are to the north, and downtown is toward the bottom of the screen. And you can see our state highways where Boulevard Park is in the northeast area, more recently annexed. Next slide, please. These are some outcomes we're hoping to achieve as part of this work, and this is really high level. We'll work with community members to identify a vision and action strategies. We've already begun to reach out to community members in small group and individual meetings. We'll be looking to update the zoning and land use, the zoning code to help facilitate investments that serve neighborhoods and serve the city as a whole. And we'll be applying a race and social equity lens to the work. Next slide, please. This is just a slide that shows some of the themes of the work that we've heard and that we are starting to focus on. We've heard this from our initial meeting from the BEDP and from the Planning Commission and in our conversations with community members already. Next slide, please. So right now we're undertaking background study of the two areas. We researched some of the history of each study area. We're gathering information about who lives here and who works here. We're doing an outreach, we're creating an outreach and engagement strategy in the coming few weeks, and we hope to move toward preliminary recommendations by the end of the year or early next year. I'm hopping over a lot of steps, but we'll be doing a lot of engagement between now and that time and hope to update you as we go along. As an interim step, we'll be developing interim zoning recommendations for your consideration for the Ambaum corridor to replace the current moratorium. So that will need to occur sometime late summer. We'll have a final plan and zoning recommendations for you in 2022. Next slide, please. In both areas, we see a diversity of people who live along Ambaum and in Boulevard Park. A lot of small businesses. We need to reach everybody who's interested in Burien in these neighborhoods, but we want to pay special attention to folks who will be most impacted by the work and those who are least likely to engage with the city. We'll also be evaluating the impacts and benefits of potential policy changes and zoning amendments. Next slide. So I pass it on to Alex Hunt, planner.
Thanks, Susan. Good evening, Mayor, council members, community members. So in addition to the initial work that Susan had just discussed, those one-on-one interviews, initial community meetings, work with the BEDP, we've also been starting our assessment of existing conditions along the Ambaum corridor and in Boulevard Park. And our summaries of existing conditions came from site visits, observations, and as well as those one-on-one interviews with stakeholders that we've conducted so far in the process. Next slide, please. So shown on the right here is the Ambaum corridor study area, enlarged, same image that Susan showed you earlier. The red symbols denote the location of those future rapid ride H-line stops. So Ambaum Boulevard serves as one of the primary north-south arterials through Burien, and the corridor supports a variety of businesses and multifamily housing. Next slide, please. Shown here is a population density map. Each dot represents one household. As you can see, there are some dense clusters along the Ambaum Boulevard corridor that denote some of the larger multifamily residential developments. The corridor is generally characterized by higher density residential uses along Ambaum and lower density and single family residential uses as you move east or west of Ambaum. Next slide, please. So assets along the Ambaum corridor. There are numerous existing assets that we've identified that should be considered and leveraged as we think about the future of the corridor. Ambaum is home to a large supply of existing market rate affordable housing, meaning that properties maintain affordable rents without any sort of subsidies. Additionally, Ambaum is home to a number of small and independent businesses that are part of the fabric of the Burien community. We've got La Canasta, Huckleberry Square, Guadalupe Market, Salmon Creek Cafe, just to name a few. And then Ambaum also provides access to a number of parks, schools, and medical service providers. Next slide, please. So we've also identified some challenges that exist along the Ambaum corridor. The corridor has seen a lack of private investment in certain areas, as visible by the presence of some vacant parcels. The existing land use patterns favor auto-oriented uses, which create a challenging pedestrian environment. And then there are concerns about development viability and concerns about the retention and the support of that existing market rate affordable housing and the small businesses that exist along the corridor. Next slide, please. Okay, now switching gears and looking at Boulevard Park. Our study area for the neighborhood is shown here in that darker gray color bounded by the dotted line. The Boulevard Park neighborhood was annexed in 2010. Boulevard Park has a strong unified sense of place organized around a central activity center where the library and commercial center are located. Next slide, please. And then again, we have a population density map, each dot representing one household. And here we see the population is generally spread pretty evenly throughout the neighborhood. Low density housing, primarily single family homes are the most prevalent residential housing type. And there is some higher density multifamily housing along the perimeter of the neighborhood. And it's also worth mentioning that the LARC, age qualified housing development, is nearing completion. So that's an additional 160 residential units coming into the neighborhood that aren't depicted here. Next slide, please. So assets at Boulevard Park. As I mentioned, Boulevard Park is organized around a shopping plaza and the library on South 120th Street, and that serves as a natural neighborhood center. Boulevard Park is home to existing market rate affordable housing as well, and historic homes and rural atmosphere along Roseburg Avenue and Military Road strengthen the neighborhood character. And then Boulevard Park also has great access to elementary schools with Southern Heights Elementary School and Hilltop Elementary just in the immediate vicinity there. Next slide, please. And then some of the challenges in Boulevard Park. Boulevard Park has limited access to parks and open space. and the population density of the neighborhood struggles to support retail, specifically food stores or grocery stores. And then geographically, Boulevard Park is cut off by 509 SeaTac Airport and steep topography that creates natural boundaries. And then diagonal roads that were constructed to follow topography create challenging intersections. So some of those challenging intersections are identified on the map here by those black crosshair symbols. And additionally, there are minimal sidewalks and pedestrian crossings serving the neighborhood. And just a glimpse of that here is in the red line marking. That's arterials that don't have sidewalks currently. And then we have the proximity to the airport, which we're all aware of, and that creates noise issues. Next slide, please.
Alex, you might want to point out the basin study boundary as well.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Public Works is currently leading a basin study. Oh, that's that light blue area marked on the map there. And that's a stormwater study being undertaken by Public Works currently. Next slide, please. So as we continue to move this project forward, our next steps are to finalize an engagement plan, an equity framework as well. Bring together an advisory group as we begin to consider land use recommendations for the two areas, and then prepare background information and plan concepts as part of the plan development process itself. Next slide, please. So that concludes our brief presentation, updating you all on the status of that plan. Susan and I are available to address any questions the council may have.
Okay, council, any questions from the presenters? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Morris.
Thank you, Mayor Mata. Susan and Alex, thank you very much. I'm really excited to see all of this move forward, especially for Boulevard Park. I was wondering if there's anything that you saw that surprised you, whether good or bad, about those two areas during your observations.
You know, one thing that we've heard from Boulevard Park is a lot of folks talking about the need for kind of increasing the quality of the walkability of the neighborhood. So pedestrian safety. We've also heard a lot about some code enforcement issues in Boulevard Park, which is a perennial problem. Almost everybody talks about the loss of the grocery store, I think a year and a half ago, which was a big loss for the neighborhood. I hear a lot from people who'd like to see some investment in sort of that downtown area. And when we looked, there is from the online magazine, a nice little brief history of Boulevard Park, which was actually at one time a thriving commercial and a complete neighborhood. So I think along the Ambaum corridor, a few months ago, I walked the entire Ambaum corridor, which is a really good experience. I'd encourage anybody to walk the corridor back and forth along the sidewalks, because you really get a strong feeling of what people are facing in that corridor. There are, it is the 120 currently is heavily used by that community. And so having a more transit-oriented form of development, I think, will be really helpful. There's a lot of sort of market rate or naturally occurring affordable housing in Ambaum, in both neighborhoods, actually. And so as we go forward, we'll want to take a look at that balance between encouraging investment. I think a lot of folks would like to see investment and some development and zoning that's changed a little bit, because we've heard from the development community that there are some challenges with our zoning in both of these neighborhoods, but at the same time attending to sort of the affordable housing and the affordable commercial spaces that are there right now.
Go ahead, Councilmember Schilling.
First, everyone, sorry, my internet's being super wacky, so I'm actually on here twice right now with two screens. So I might be switching back and forth really quickly if my internet goes out again. But Susan, I've been reaching out to and talking to the Association of Manufactured Mobile Homes, because we have two manufactured mobile home lots at the north end of Ambaum. And one thing that they're really interested, it's about 30 homes. Half the families are Hispanic. And one of the things they brought up to me was the interest in zoning those two lots for them being permanently manufactured home zones. They're not very big. One of them is on the, I guess, southwest west side of Ambaum, and one of them is on the northeast east side of Ambaum, right by Salmon Creek Cafe in that area. I think that's definitely important to keep in mind too, that is long time manufactured mobile home lots where people have lived there for decades in manufactured homes. And that's a form of affordable housing. It's a form of access to building home ownership and home wealth. I think we should seriously consider zoning those two lots for permanent manufactured home use, just on Ambaum there. And then I don't know if, I think I was cutting in and out of what Deputy Mayor Marks was saying, but if she was talking about transit-oriented development or not, I'll just reiterate it if she was. I'm in favor of a lot of transit-oriented development, and really appreciate the comments around talking with the community of developers on what could be possible and what we'd like to see there in terms of what investment they're willing to make for apartments, multifamily spaces, and things like that. So I just want to share my support for that. Also, Susan, taking the possibility of zoning for like neighborhood stores, like we discussed when the conversation was going on about the neighborhood store going into Three Tree Point, and talking about the possible zoning for new neighborhood style stores like that in areas like Ambaum and Boulevard Park, just because they have trouble with food accessibility in grocery stores and things like that. So
Yeah.
all right, yeah, thank you.
Really appreciate the comments and appreciate anybody's insider comments. Thank you very much, Councilmember Schilling.
Council, is there any other questions, concerns, or comments you'd like to make? Thank you very much, Susan, for the presentation. Also, Alex, we really appreciate the information tonight.
Yeah, thank you for your time.